Hello, everyone, and welcome to our channel. Today, we have an interesting story about the moon and space. The title of the story is called To the Moon and Beyond, A Journey Through Space. And what we usually do is we go through the story for about 10 minutes, then review the story for another 10 minutes or so in relation to the words, the phrases, and the expressions that we kind of saw throughout the story. So let's begin. On July 20th, 1969, the world held its breath. Astronaut Neil Armstrong stood on the ladder of the lunar module, and then he took a step down. A crackling voice was heard coming through the radio. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong's boot pressed into the soft dust of the lunar surface. It left a footprint that would mark the beginning of mankind's journey beyond Earth. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin followed behind, and together they planted the American flag on the moon's surface. The expanse of the universe stretched endlessly above them as a silent witness to history. On Earth, millions of people cheered as their eyes were fixed on the grainy images coming through their television screens. In the years following, the Apollo missions continued, but public interest seemed to lessen over time. The 1972 Apollo 17 mission was the final mission where man walked on the moon. Space exploration seemed to pause as funding and public enthusiasm declined. The big question was, would humans ever return to the moon? As interest in the space race decreased, NASA introduced the Space Shuttle. The Space Shuttle was a reusable spacecraft that would revolutionize space travel. The shuttle program saw triumphs like the first American woman, Sally Ride, traveling to space in 1983. It also faced devastating tragedies like the Shuttle Challenger disaster in 1986 and Columbia's loss in 2003. However, space stations like Mir and the International Space Station, ISS, became signs of global cooperation. Floating high above the Earth, astronauts from different nations conducted experiments. They proved that space was not just an arena for competition, but also a platform for unity. Many astronauts spent months aboard the ISS, studying how space affects the human body. They also tested new technologies that might one day be used on other planets. The idea of living on Mars was still a distant dream, but the future was starting to take shape. Even as the shuttle program came to an end in 2011, the spirit of exploring space remained alive. The question was, what would come next? As the 21st century began, world governments weren't the only ones looking up at space. A billionaire entrepreneur, Elon Musk, had a dream. He wanted to make space travel accessible to humanity and one day colonize Mars. In 2002, he founded SpaceX, which was an ambitious company that many doubted would be successful. But in 2008, the SpaceX Falcon 1 rocket was launched and reached Earth's orbit. This proved that private companies could compete in spaceflight. In 2012, the Dragon spacecraft successfully docked with the ISS and was the first commercial cargo delivery to space. Then, in 2020, the SpaceX Crew Dragon, carrying two NASA astronauts, launched from the United States. This was the first crewed mission from the U.S. since the Space Shuttle's retirement in 2011. With each new success, SpaceX set its sights on something called the Starship Project. Competition grew as other companies joined the race. Jeff Bezos of Amazon founded Blue Origin, which also began developing spacecraft for deep space missions. NASA then partnered with private firms to push human spaceflight beyond low Earth orbit. All of humanity was preparing for something bigger. In April of 2026, SpaceX and NASA are planning the first manned space mission back to the moon. The name of this mission is Artemis 2. 4 astronauts will conduct a flyby of the moon and will be the first crew to travel beyond Earth's orbit in almost 50 years. After the launch occurs and the rocket reaches upper orbit, the crew will conduct a series of checks for approximately 24 hours. Next, the crew will conduct a burn of the rocket engines, which will propel it to the moon. Once they reach the vicinity of the moon, they will circle around and conduct a free return trajectory using the moon's gravity to send the spaceship back to Earth. The entire mission is expected to last 10 days. The Artemis 3 mission is expected to occur in 2027 and will include a lunar landing on the moon. The landing will include astronauts returning to the surface of the moon to study the moon's south pole. By the early 2030s, humans are expected to return to the moon more frequently. These visits are expected to be longer term, with the primary goal of establishing a permanent base. They will then use the moon as a launch pad for deeper space exploration. The moon becomes a stepping stone. Mars is next. By 2035, we can expect to see more frequent missions to Mars. The initial visits will start with robotic missions to build facilities before the first humans arrive. In the 2040s, the first Mars colony will most likely be established. Supplies will be sent in advance before the astronauts arrive to make Mars a second home. Life on Mars will be difficult. The astronauts must live in pressurized habitats, grow food in greenhouses, and find ways to extract water from the planet's soil. Communication with Earth will take minutes because of the distance and will make quick decisions impossible. Meanwhile, private space companies will continue to innovate. Space tourism will become more available to the public, which will create opportunities for average people to experience outer space. Some private companies will focus on asteroid mining, harvesting precious metals from these giant rocks floating in space. Others hope to send robotic missions to exoplanets, planets which are outside our solar system, to search for signs of life. By the mid 21st century, the dream of a multi-planetary civilization will become a reality. Scientists predict that by 2050, humans will most likely have permanent settlements on the moon and Mars. And then there's the biggest question of all: are we alone? Deep space telescopes and probes currently search the universe for signs of extraterrestrial life. Some scientists believe we may likely find microbial life on Mars or under Europa's icy crust. Others believe that the possibility of intelligent civilizations may exist far beyond what we can currently see. In the end, one day we may stand on the Earth, and while looking up at the night sky, we'll see Mars glowing, and they'll know that humans are living there, exploring, learning, and continuing the journey that started with one small step on the moon. So now let's do a little bit of a review of what we read. One of the big, or one of the more common or frequently used words throughout the story was the word called mission. Uh, Mission is basically a specific task that is given to a person or groups of people. And you could think about mission as kind of like a focused goal, like you're set out to do something specific, like achieve a certain goal. And here, where it said space mission, we're basically referring to traveling through space or visiting other planets. In a sentence, you could use the Navy had a mission to protect the shipping ports. Mission is often used for military type of projects where they have a mission to accomplish a certain objective. Or you could also say the researcher had a personal mission to find a cure for cancer. So he had a personal mission to cure cancer, basically. You could also say the president had a mission to keep the country running smoothly. So his objective or his goal was to keep it running smoothly. Then you could also say the company's mission was to provide the highest quality product in the market. So that's the word mission. Another word that we saw was lunar. Lunar. Lunar is basically something that is related to the moon. So in a sentence, they planned for the lunar landing, which is basically landing on the moon. Or you probably heard about the word lunar eclipse. Used in a sentence, a lunar eclipse will occur next week. And that's basically when the moon moves into the Earth's shadow, causing the moon to darken. So a lunar eclipse. We also saw the word colonize. So colonize is to send a group of people to take control of an area. And in the story, they talked about colonizing Mars. And that's basically sending astronauts and people to Mars to stay there long term and prepare for more people to arrive. So they visit initially, and then more and more people keep on coming to that particular area, and that's called colonizing. Then we also seen a lot of words with space, spaceship, spacecraft, starship, and rocket. Essentially, all these words are the same, and basically, that's a vehicle that travels in space. With the exception of rocket, rocket, if you want to be really specific, can be the engine of a spacecraft. And the engine is basically what pushes the spacecraft. So if you remember that big flame or fire coming out from underneath the rocket or the spaceship, that would be the rocket itself or the engine. And we also saw a pretty big word called extraterrestrial. And that basically means it's something from outside the Earth and Earth's atmosphere. Used in a sentence, the astronauts brought back some extraterrestrial rocks from the moon's surface. Or some scientists wonder if there's extraterrestrial life on other planets. So, is there life on other planets, or anything from outer space could be referred to as extraterrestrial? Then another word is orbit. Orbit. Orbit is a path that one object follows as it travels around another object in space. So basically, the Earth's orbit around the sun every 365 days. So the Earth goes around the sun every 365 days. The spaceship orbited around the Earth. And then the rocket engines pushed the spaceship out of Earth's orbit. And here we kind of have a picture showing, say, this is the Earth, and this black ball would be orbiting around the Earth or around that circle. So that's orbit. Then we also saw a lot of acronyms. So an acronym is a shortened form of a word or words using specific letters. Usually they take the first letters of the word. So we saw NASA. NASA stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So they took the NASA to form NASA. And then ISS, which stands for International Space Station. Once again, they took the I, they took the S, and the other S. And then TV, which is short for television. Television is just one word, but they break it out into two words, basically. You have tele and then vision. So they just went with the T and the V. And then some other examples would be NATO, which we hear a lot in the news. NATO would stand for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's NATO. And then USA, of course, United States of America. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Once again, I really enjoy doing these. And if you do have any comments or can even subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. It helps support the channel. And any comments that you have for things that you'd like to see in the future, or maybe something a little bit different, would be great to know. So just drop us a line if you could. And once again, please subscribe.